Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today on the Cleared for Takeoff webinar. We'll do some introductions in a second here, but in terms of the theme of the webinar today, we'll be discussing Atlantic Aviation and their automation journey alongside Rossum. Rossum, now a Coupa company and a Coupa product, provides AP automation, document automation solution for our customers, and how CrossCountry helped enable our solution for Atlantic Aviation. So without further ado, we'll just jump into some introductions here quick. Liza, if you want to kick us off, that would be great.
Hi. Yes, of course. My name is Liza Juarez. I'm an accounts payable supervisor with Atlantic Aviation.
Thank you, Liza. We'll kick it back to me here. My name is Jamie Langen. I operate as our head of sales here for Rossum, specifically in the US. Been with the company about 1.5 years and have spent the last 5 or 6 years in the AP automation space, helping multinational companies with their AP automation journey. Kick it over to you, Jordan.
All right. Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you. Jordan Cullinane. I'm Managing Director in our Technology and Tech Enablement practice here at CrossCountry. I was one of the founding members of our Coupa practice 12 years ago. And 2 years ago, we founded our Rossum partnership. So congrats to the Rossum team and now being a Coupa company. We've been deploying this invoice tool for 2 years now. I remember last summer, we started our journey with Atlantic Aviation at their beautiful offices in Plano, Texas last summer. It was about 120 degrees at the time. So we're really excited today, Liza, to hear your story and how you're using Coupa and Rossum.
And I think the background there too, Atlantic Aviation became a Rossum customer, I think it was in the fall of 2025. And as Jordan kind of mentions, there were a lot of discussions on the best ways to roll out Rossum for Atlantic Aviation, and we'll get into that here in just a second. I think where we can start is just giving everybody an overview of Atlantic Aviation, the company themselves, just some background on what Atlantic Aviation does. So I'll kick it over to you, Liza.
Yes, of course. So Atlantic Aviation, it's a fixed base operation. So we handle a lot of private aircraft. So it could be like teams, it could be charters, it could be some commercial. Some of our locations do have commercial, but we service these aircraft with fuel. Not only fuel, we also do catering services. If they need hotel or rental vehicles, we also do that for them. It's like a upscale concierge service for our customers. We also have hangar space for their aircraft if they don't want it out in the climates, and we have tie downs on our ramp as well. But it's more of a luxury type way to travel. They don't have to deal with TSA or anything like that. Customs, they may need to, depending where they're coming from, but their car can be driven straight up to the ramp. And, it's just a luxury service way of travel if you have the means, I should say. But we have we have about 109 locations across the U.S. We've even gone international now. As I see it, the number keeps growing on locations that we're acquiring. So therefore, our invoices keep growing as well. So we needed something to assist with our spend, right? Like we needed to make sure that we had something that could manage our spend better, especially because Atlantic just keeps growing.
Sure.
So, yep.
And Jordan, I know that you guys, CrossCountry, has some experience in working with private equity-owned companies like Atlantic Aviation. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so anytime that I think you're working with a private equity-owned firm, you can just expect high expectations, high standards. Every company we work with that's owned by private equity wants accurate data. They want it quickly, and they rely on us to give them that. Atlantic Aviation invoices were coming in from 109 different locations. Every month there was a massive accrual that the AP team and Liza and Sandra were working through. And I think the expectations from private equity to their portfolio companies is consistent, that we're expecting you to automate, we're expecting you to do it quickly, and we don't want you to hire headcount. Um, and, I think the story here with you all is similar to what we see in a lot of cases.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And to your point, I mean, working with a lot of those companies, you guys have got a good background or a good feel, right, for some of the challenges that they're up against. And I think we can get into that in just a bit. I think where we'll go now is just a background, right, on your relationship, Liza, with Coupa, right? Why you guys were kind of set on Coupa for Procure-to-Pay and a spend tool and that analysis, and just any relationship and background there on why you chose to move forward with them.
Yes. So our previous system, it was services and goods were just requested, and then they weren't approved prior to. So Coupa for us is a new system as far as POs. POs didn't exist prior to Coupa for our company. And the bigger we're getting, and as much spend is going out, executives, of course, want to know, what are we spending funds on, and are they approved? And if they're not approved, just trying to get a better handle of control of the spend, and then trying to see as well, where are we spending? So procurement kind of manages that piece of it and see, can we use existing suppliers that we already have internationally, or domestically over multiple locations, instead of just constantly onboarding suppliers. So this just kind of helps with more of a visual for our company to see what suppliers are we using for the most part, and do they already exist as a supplier that already that services exactly what this other location is. Can't we just use that supplier instead of onboarding a new supplier? So trying to control our suppliers as well, that can accommodate our services and needs.
Sure. And I mean, I think you would even say, for the most part, the Coupa rollout and the software itself has worked wonderful for Atlantic, right? But I think when we get into projects, since we're focused on AP and supplier and automation around that process, what we often find is that when you're getting into these projects, right, it often kind of reveals that there are bottlenecks around ingestion, right? So whereas a tool can solve kind of the procurement side of the house, like Coupa did, and really enable that process and make it more streamlined, there is part of the process where, okay, now suppliers are actually sending in invoices, and it's wonderful that they've got a PO on them, right? But considering the amount of suppliers that you might work with and the number of formats that they might be sending, it kind of uncovers that there's some other challenges around the ingestion process. Can you talk maybe just about how some of those challenges were revealed, or how they remained after you went live with Coupa, and then why you guys started looking at Rossum to begin with?
Yes. So when we first went on to Coupa, like I said, our previous system, our FBOs, there was a person at each location that would put in the invoices to process for payment. Well, they already have a lot of accommodating the customers, satisfying, making sure the customers are satisfied and attending to them. So it's like they really don't have time to upload invoices. So we wanted to take that away from them as well. So with Coupa, we were like, okay, well, we can start doing POs, have the supplier bill on POs, and, do that kind of process. So it takes that first person out of it. With Coupa, we knew that their system, because it doesn't remember anything, like if they were to process invoices through Coupa directly, it would have to be touched from one of our teammates, and with no additional heads in the department that we could get for Coupa, we were like, we need something to help automate this. We need something to help teach what to look for on the invoices. And it was, Rossum came up, and they, we reviewed everything they had to offer, and CrossCountry assisted with that. And it was just something that we knew that we needed, and it was the route that we wanted to take. Yep. So with that, it just helps us, like, okay, now if we have suppliers that are not going to utilize Coupa, then we need a system that can remember the invoices, what information to look for. So it was more of a team effort. We are still working on suppliers utilizing the Coupa portal, but with this big of a transition that Atlantic is going through with PO, now utilizing PO, it is slow adoption, not only for our internal, but for our customers. So that's something that now we're completely in Coupa, and we are going to try to enforce suppliers to utilize the Coupa portal and also get our internals to start utilizing POs to make it easier, not only for them, but for the customer, since they would have more control of invoicing and seeing, visually seeing like the payment, when the payment's going to be processed and that kind of thing. So, and then each invoice is different. You have 109 locations. You may have some mom and pop customers that handwrite, information, invoices. And that's something that we have to work with as well. To try to get them to adapt and see if we can utilize them and just move forward with the Coupa experience for them that would, help them out as well as help us out.
Sure. I mean, I think the feedback that we hear from a lot of current Coupa customers is just how naturally that Rossum fits into the overall Coupa offering around invoice ingestion, right? They've got these excellent ways, like the Coupa supplier portal you mentioned, right, of invoice ingestion when there is a PO and that a supplier can go in there and flip it, or if the supplier wants to connect directly via CXML and they're already in the Coupa network. But I think for a while, there seemed to be a gap in automatic processing of PDF email documents or print to PDF documents, right?
Yeah.
And their solution, I think you nailed some of the challenges that any company would see around ingestion, those type of formats, right? There's also a lot of manual effort in that. And with an IDP solution like Rossum, kind of being built AI native, I think the biggest thing that we can provide our customers is accuracy out of the gate of those documents, right? So we can read them better than a legacy OCR or template-based OCR could do that. Ingest them into different kind of folders or queues, as we call them. So we're almost doing some splitting and sorting. And then I think the biggest thing with Coupa that we've seen the benefit is that our matching capability is far beyond what a lot of our competitors could offer, right? So we can match in different data sets. We've actually got some invoices from Atlantic Aviation that we saw as, kind of challenges up front that I think we helped with. And we've got a couple of examples here that we can talk through. And I'm sure Jordan can kind of talk through them too. And let me just click onto the next slide here. So we're looking at complex invoice routing on these fuel invoices. Tell us a little bit about them. There's a story behind these, so we'd love to hear that and kind of the challenges you were having before Rossum.
Sure, of course. So our FBOs, obviously, they provide fueling for all the aircraft that come in. So this is a fuel invoice, and each supplier's invoice looks different, and we have over 10 suppliers. And so the way our system works is these will never be in like a PO that can be created in Coupa, because it's going to be coming from our point of sale system, which we use as Jetstream. So our bases key in the fuel load in that system. And then when it comes over into our ERP, at that point, that creates a PO. So that's some challenges that these invoices will never have a Coupa PO listed on there. So of course, we needed AI to assist, and we needed some rules in there to what to look for. And instead of the PO number, we want it to match on the bill of lading number, which is highlighted in green there as well. So that's our unique identifier for every single load that Atlantic Aviation receives from suppliers. So, and then not only that, the location, right? So we have 109 locations, all over the country, U.S., international as well. So the location is also an identifier to say, okay, this PO is going to have this in it. and then we're going to base it off of the bill of lading. That's how we're going to match the invoice to PO within Rossum. And, the AI piece of it is, whenever we first started with this, we knew AI is a big part of the future. So how can we get this to work for Atlantic in our processes that we have for our fuel purchases? And that's another reason why we went with Rossum as well, because the AI capabilities that they do have. And it's just a matter of training. And yes, you have to touch it at first, but the more you touch it, the more it learns, and you do the thresholds, and it becomes easier and easier, and it works.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome to hear. Jordan, yeah, I was going to say you were involved in a lot of the discovery here, and I'm sure you've seen our kind of multi-matching capability that we have with different data sets. Talk about it, please. I'd love to hear your insight.
Yeah, so I remember the first conversation that Liza and I had. Liza explained the need to match around bill of lading instead of Coupa PO number. And for all of their fuel invoices, they are imported into Coupa via the Open Business Network. And the vendors don't have the Coupa PO number. They have the bill of lading number. And this could be from a fuel system. It could be from a work order system. It could be from any system where maybe the vendor doesn't have the Coupa PO. And when I heard that, I just knew that Rossum would be a good fit, because you can match via multiple data sets within Rossum, bill of lading, work order number, Coupa PO number as one. And then if those don't exist, you can go to the level down, which is a fuzzy match based on line description. So I heard that from Liza, I knew it would be a fit. And then, the second one, Liza, that you touched on was the routing. So we met with someone recently. They had 162 Coupa invoice inboxes. And this was their approach to manage inbox routing. Vendors had to know if they were shipping to Omaha to send their invoice to this named Coupa invoice inbox versus pick another place, Chicago, another Coupa invoice inbox. As you know, vendors, that's a big challenge for them. With Rossum, you can pick up on fields on the invoice like FBO and route that to Omaha or Chicago without the vendor emailing a named email address.
Yes, and that is correct. We have 109 locations, but these invoices, fuel invoices, come here to corporate, but all of the other invoices do go to each location for review and approval, just because they know the services and goods that they received. And this is why we are encouraging POs as well, so they can just bypass reviewing invoices and move forward.
Yeah.
And then the other side is going to the next slide here, the non-POs, right? And missing information on invoices and how Rossum can help with that. I know kind of the bane of a lot of AP clerks' existence is dealing with utility providers, utility invoices.
Yes.
And I think we've dealt with this time and time again as, current solutions out in the marketplace don't really have an answer for this. If you are a template-based offering, right, it's really difficult to tell the system where to look for if it's not identifying that there's an invoice number on it, right? And then, okay, can you teach it to create a couple fields into one to actually put an invoice number in that, has logic around it when it's coming into Coupa? Tell us a little bit about how Atlantic Aviation was dealing with this, because I think it's really similar to how a lot of companies want to process invoices, utility invoices, but can't today.
Yes. So, of course, previous system, we had people in the field, entering invoices for payment. And sometimes we would give them like, hey, if it has no invoice, use this structure. But of course, they just kind of use it how they want to use it. Therefore, we had potential for like duplicate payments, because the invoices numbers were keyed in differently, and therefore they still get routed and approved. So with this, it's no longer a person, it's now a system stating, hey, if there's no invoice number, look for the bill date and let's get the last four of the account number. So that's our unique identifier or unique invoice number for invoices that don't have an invoice number listed. So that's the structure that we use for our non-invoice, documents that do not have an invoice number. So Rossum was able to help us with that, to get that in the system. So anytime now it knows, okay, this supplier is not going to have an invoice number, we're just going to do this. And it does it, and it's worked.
Yeah. And we're getting a lot of good questions in the chat. We'll address those at the end. Jordan, any comments to add in around utility invoices? You get a lot of Rossum customers coming your way to CrossCountry, and I'm sure that they're elated that we can solve this. But any maybe around non-PO or around utility invoices in your experience?
So something that we didn't do with Atlantic Aviation, but that we do with utility invoices is we capture consumption. So if it's for water or if it's for kilowatt hours consumed electric, you're going to get the utility invoice bill. You're going to pay the vendor the amount on the invoice, but how much water did you use that month? How much electric did you use last month? And in some industries like hospitality and food and beverage, there's requirements around reporting. So this is, I think, one of the reasons that we're seeing in waste management, I should add, is that we're seeing Rossum, because you're paying the vendor and then you're also capturing consumption data.
Yep, it's a great call out around ESG requirements that some companies are tracking too, and where we can help around, especially utility invoices, right? A lot of that data traditionally doesn't get tracked, right? So it's something that we can help with. We'll keep it moving here. The next slide here, we have kind of the bottom line on what this meant for Atlantic Aviation, right? So in general, how putting Rossum in place helped you with some of your business initiatives. I think we can keep it high level, Liza, and I know it's mainly on the side here, but just coming from your mouth, what did you see after Rossum was implemented by CrossCountry, and what were some of the results that you were seeing pretty quickly?
Yeah, so like I said previously, we don't have a lot of customers, or we're not utilizing the PO, a majority of the POs yet. So we're having to process them through Rossum, the invoices through Rossum. And what we've seen is that we don't have to touch as many anymore, because we've taught the system, this invoice, this supplier, this is what you're looking for. And it just goes straight on through to the first in line to review and code. So it has helped, because it's taken out, for the most part. I mean, there are exceptions, but we're not looking at all invoices, every invoice that's being processed. And so it's just patience, right? You have to teach it. Once you teach it, it's worth it, because then you don't see it going forward. Late fees, there were complaints that, invoices weren't being processed timely. And, so there was a backlog, because we were having to review and get, teach each invoice, Rossum, each invoice, what to look for, where to look for. Don't pick up past due balances, only pick up current balances. Like, it was just teaching, being very specific, and that takes time, but it's well worth it at the end, because now we don't touch as many as we used to.
Sure. And I think, kind of not to ruin the end story here, but the spoiler was that Atlantic Aviation did move forward with Rossum, and that was kind of just a review, right, of some of the background of what they're seeing today, how we've met some of their challenges, and how Rossum's helped. I think looking into this next slide, really what we're trying to focus on here is, this was, again, like we said, fall of 2025 when Atlantic moved forward with Rossum, and then CrossCountry came in to implement, and the system was up and running, I think, 8 to 10 weeks. Jordan, correct me if I'm wrong, it was one of our quicker implementations. But since then, there's been some exciting news around the Rossum Coupa acquisition. And I think the highlight here, beyond some of the numbers that you're seeing on the screen, is that we are one solution now, right? So whereas we were talking as a separate UI in some of these conversations with Liza and the team at Atlantic, we now have an embedded version of Rossum right within the Coupa platform, right? So this kind of single pane of glass, and moving away from the toggling between, a different UI for your invoice processing is now what we can offer Coupa customers. And like I said, we are our Coupa now, right? So we are considered the document intelligence piece within inside inside Coupa. What our customers are seeing, 85% automation rates, 98% data accuracy, and really the flexibility to support any complex custom business matching rules like we've talked about with Liza at Atlantic. I will go into just some of the benefits that we're seeing within Rossum. I think the kind of the technical differentiators of Rossum over kind of a template-based OCR. The focus here is on this cloud-based AI technology, right? And kind of moving away from some of the layout challenges that our customers were seeing in prior solutions with template-based OCR. AI really allows us to be adaptable to the format that suppliers are sending their documents in. And just as Liza mentioned as well, with AI comes the ability to have recall, right? And memorization of data as we're processing it. So AI, just as a human would, an AP clerk that you're training really learns in real time as we're giving the system, kind of pointing it to the different information or data that it's picking up on the screen, and it starts memorizing that, right? So it learns just as a human would, and you can teach it that. So it's kind of moving away from having to understand a document and a template that it's being taught. And obviously with all of this comes the ability to start reporting on that and get insight for your business in the tools that we have around conversational insights. We have AI-powered adaptability to any invoice layout. We've kind of talked around that, right? And what that really means is that we read documents contextually like a human brain, right? So we say that any content that's on an invoice can be captured, again, moving away from kind of this layout or template-based OCR, but we can process documents that are in multiple languages, varying formats, whether that's a structured format from a supplier like EDI beyond CXML. And there is no need for any type of rigid templated solution, right? So again, multi-language, multi-countries that we support, and multi-formats. And then lastly here, we'll just touch around the high touchless processing rate that Rossum provides, right? So we have confidence tracking on each field that comes through the system. Jordan, you might be able to kind of talk about this too, and the benefit that some of our customers have seen. But unlike some of our other competitors, we track confidence at a per field basis. And what that allows us to do is just understand how confident the system is in processing documents, which really ultimately leads to higher accuracy and higher automation at the end of the day, using a new feature that we call Automation Assistant. But yeah, I mean, Jordan, if you've had any experience in how our customers see this or the benefit that some of them have had in working with CrossCountry, I'd be interested in hearing your feedback here.
Yeah, so when we selected the Rossum partnership 2 years ago, we looked at 5 different invoice platforms. We looked at some of the strengths, weaknesses of them. The confidence level by field, I think, was one that really tilted the scale in Rossum's favor. And part of our methodology is to set different confidence thresholds by field. So, for payment terms, maybe you're okay with a lower confidence because you're going to pay from the payment term that's set on the PO, right? But for fields where you require higher confidence, like supplier, I think we all agree it'd be pretty bad if you had an invoice routed to the wrong supplier. So we can have a higher confidence on a field like supplier, 95%, and a lower confidence on a field like payment terms, because you're going to pay to the terms on your contract. So, as part of our implementation methodology and rollout, we do go by the field confidence scorings by field.
Sure.
Jamie, so there was a question here in the chat that I do think we should talk through.
Yeah, go on.
Because I think we get this question all the time. It says, where do invoice approvals happen, in Coupa or Rossum? So I think,
sure.
Do you want to touch on that one? Because I think that's a key question we get a lot.
Sure. I mean, I think our experience shows that it varies, Jordan. I mean, you guys are probably working with a number of customers who have approval workflows that are set up in Coupa today that they want to keep in place, right? And then there are other customers that are saying, We don't have anything set up today. Is Rossum able to do any type of, approval or routing within the system, right? I think normally when we're talking to Coupa customers, it's keep what's in place today. The functionality is built in there, and that's where it should stay. But yeah, we've kind of seen it in a number of different ways.
Yeah, and I think for the folks on the phone and Liza, you can assume that if you're using Coupa, approvals will happen in Coupa.
Yes.
So Rossum extracts, it sends to Coupa. When it gets there, it looks at the PO balance. Is there funds remaining? It will look at, is there a goods receipt or not? And then it will send to approvals. So all of that process still remains in Coupa.
Yes. And the good thing is that it doesn't go into like a draft status within Coupa. It will go to the requester that it needs to. So it will be sitting in their queue to take action.
Spot on.
Yeah.
And speaking of customizable, we'll cover this just quickly. I mean, one of the benefits of using an AI tool is the ability to talk to it as you would tell a human around commands, right? We have natural language within the system that gives us the ability to create rules kind of on the fly. I don't know, Liza, if you wanted to talk around the customability of Rossum and how you guys have used it and how your team has used it. But I think, what we're talking about here is just some of the rules that you guys have set up in the system, or Jordan even, as you guys were a part of that implementation.
Yeah. So of course the invoice, the bill date, if it doesn't have it, then the invoice, then we're going to use the bill date along with the account numbers. But we do have check requests too, that I believe there's a check request field that we can do in Rossum that will, have it come over to Coupa as a check request. But one thing that we did implement recently is our utilities. So our utilities, it's always going to be coded to the same geocode, and rather the requester have to code each and every time within Rossum, we have now, I believe it's a queue that now says, okay, with utilities, it's always going to be this geocode. Go, base it off of the location. The FBO code is what we call it in Rossum, and then whenever it comes over to Coupa, it's already coded. So that's something that we're recently implemented. And I believe it's working. It's working pretty well, because now it's no longer going to the requester; it's going straight to the approver. So sure. I know that's just one of many customizations that we are working on, but we're just doing it slowly to make sure we don't have any hiccups and everything's working fine. And then we're going to move on to the next supplier that's always coded the same way, so that we can take out that coding piece of it, especially for non-addressable suppliers that are never going to log into Coupa. And that's, for us, it's our government agencies, our utilities, it's, customs, it's all of those that we know they're not going to use it. So how can we better help ourselves with invoice processing?
Sure. And Jordan, any other examples? I think we've got one slide here left, and we'll kick it to you, Jordan, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions. But how have you seen customers use natural language, or some of the benefit, and how they can basically clean data before it's getting into the system?
Well, I think in that example, it's an example of how Liza and team were always looking to optimize, and why you all were so good to work with, because we went live 10 weeks. We had three queues: PO, non-PO, and fuel. Fuel wasn't ready yet, so we did PO and non-PO. Then we added fuel, and like Liza just touched on, now there's an ongoing enablement around utilities. So for anyone who's thinking about Rossum, I wouldn't say aim for 100% perfection in 8 weeks. It's like get live, start processing some invoices week 8, week 10, and then ongoing, kind of handle it like Liza and team have, to then focus on automation on an ongoing basis.
I think it's a good call out or segue into what we wanted to talk to around routing too, Jordan, and how, you talked about how Atlantic Aviation had set up their different inboxes or queues, right? I think one of the benefits that Rossum provides is, before we talk about accuracy and how the AI can read and how it can recall things and how you can teach it using natural language, right? There is this ability for Rossum to route invoices to different portions of the business or geographically, right? To different parts of the world if you're a multinational. And the benefit of that, as a lot of companies today, they have this kind of traffic controller function of someone that sits in basically an inbox, an AP inbox. We see it all the time that it's one person's job to route it to different business units or other inboxes to process invoices, right? Rossum has the ability to do this routing up front so that it goes into the right location and the right person is actually working that invoice if it needs some type of manual review or if it gets held up and it needs to be validated. So I think that's a huge benefit that some customers have seen with us that have just kind of gone with Rossum just based off of that and how we can adjust things. And we can also do splitting and sorting, right? So documents that are coming in attached together, they've got multiple different documents in one format, right? So, it might be an invoice, it might be a BOL, it might be a fuel slip, right? So anything that we're seeing, we can actually split those documents and sort them and actually put them into different folders and route them. If you guys have any comments here, awesome, or how you guys have seen other customers use it, that's great. If not, we can kind of move on. We've talked about reporting. Jordan, I want to make sure to give you the floor here to talk just about the implementation journey. We've reviewed it already, but how you guys have seen and how it kind of broke out.
Yeah, and I think we got 10 minutes left, and then there's some Q&A. So, again, CrossCountry was introduced to Atlantic Aviation when they were in the middle of their Coupa rollout, and we were not implementing Coupa at the time. So we were introduced to Liza, Sandra, AP team, Lisa, and Sean, and our first goal was to just kind of look at the systems and determine what the right fit was. And then at this point, Rossum was selected, and then we started on design sessions. And we'll talk about the fuel process, but we started with simple workflows first, PO, non-PO, and then we spent a lot of time on fuel, which we'll talk through shortly. I would also say, and Liza, question for you, what was it like using Rossum at the early days? And talk us about the adoption or training that your team went through to eventually become comfortable using Rossum.
Yes. So we worked a lot with Virginia and Francis and Neha, which we still work with them with implementing, like I said, the utility geocode and whatnot, just seeing what works best for Atlantic. Going through the Rossum first, like even at testing, how easy it was with Virginia and Neha and Francis and even Jordan, coming to our office and just sitting with us, seeing what our needs were, what would work for Atlantic. Rossum has multiple, selections that can be identified. Like, do you want this to be captured? Do you want this to be captured? And we were like, no, we really don't want that. So it's really customizing it to your company's needs. But it really worked out with Atlantic. Okay, so at first it was intimidating, but then whenever we started working on it, we were like, oh my God, this is so simple. It's so easy. And so it was just, like I said, just being patient, teaching Rossum what fields we wanted captured, which ones we needed to have. If it was left blank, do not move forward. We, just in a lot of discussions, we had a lot of meetings on what needed to be captured, what was required, what is optional. If they put something there, okay, we need to have it here. So it was a lot with working with Rossum, our internal IT team, our departments, to see what worked best with Atlantic and how did we want this to flow. So it seemed intimidating at first, but then the more you start working on it, you're like, oh my God, this is so simple. And why are we just now doing this? Right. Yeah. So it was a pleasant, not only was it pleasant getting that, going, but the people that you work with and that helped get this implemented for our department and our IT and then CrossCountry and even Rossum, it's been a pleasure to work with them and continuous, just continuous teamwork.
And Liza's now the real Rossum expert here.
I agree.
It's funny how that works.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, maybe you can touch upon, Jordan, Liza, we'll kick it back to you guys again, what the invoice flow looks like with Rossum today. Kind of a simple overview here, but any other commentary you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things I'd add is that Rossum does have the ability to do API or EDI integrations. In 100% of our Coupa engagements so far, we've only done the PDF use case. So vendors emailing PDFs. Something that Atlantic Aviation did was splitting. So a vendor would send one PDF with 4 invoices, and we would split. Rossum can split that out. Alternatively, I think there was another use case where they would send one invoice that Atlantic Aviation wanted to be 2 invoices, and well, as hopefully I'm remembering the right way, but we walked through all that in design, all those scenarios, set that up, and now those scenarios are covered in Rossum. Additionally, it does a duplicate check, so it will validate that the invoice number in supplier is not a duplicate with any of your existing Coupa invoices.
Yeah.
Something that we see a lot of times, and as you can talk to this, is clients go live and they say, we don't have all of our invoices in Coupa. So we want to load a historical data set of all invoice numbers by vendor from 2020 to today. And you can do that, and then Rossum will also validate against those historical invoices.
Yes, and that's something we needed as well with Rossum when they, stated that that's something they can do. That was huge because we don't want to we don't want customers owing us money back for our mistake, right? We don't want to do duplicate payments to a customer just because it needed to be able to look at the history of, has a supplier already been paid this invoice? Does this invoice number already exist for this supplier? So that was a huge thing that we needed as well.
I mean, it's such a cash flow killer, right, Liza?
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what we come across with a lot of our customers is the percentage that they're paying out in duplicates. And I think, Jordan, to your point, right, we flag duplicates in a number of different ways, right? So it might be by the invoice number, or vendor name, or total amount, right? These are fields that we can look up. And the nice thing is it's customizable, that you can build out that like duplicate detection, how you want to handle it in Rossum. So if you've got another way, we can look at how you process duplicates today. But to Liza's point, to your point as well, with Coupa specifically, I think a common thing that we're seeing around duplicates is, okay, suppliers submit the invoice in the Coupa supplier portal, but then they'll also email one, and there is no way of checking downstream, is this invoice already processed, right? So you end up paying something out from email and the Coupa supplier portal because you can't really check it, and we're doing that in real time with Coupa, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. I think the only thing we have left here is just kind of the results so far that Atlantic's seeing. Liza, you could talk to these, I could talk these, totally up to you.
Yeah, so the touchless invoices is 75%, but it's a team effort, not only within our organization, but along with our suppliers too. Are they providing all the information that we require on our invoices? And that's something that we saw whenever we first implemented Coupa and Rossum, because like I said, previous system, there was a person keying in the information, but with AI, it's, AI is reading the document, and, maybe we were compensating for what the supplier wasn't putting in, and it hurt us. So, so we're trying to teach our suppliers too, hey, can you please add this? Because if not, it's delaying, the process flow. You're not going to get paid timely because you're not putting what location the services were at, and that matters for us. And not only does that matter for us, it's, you need to put in your, because it not only reads the supplier name, it reads the supplier address, because we have multiple suppliers with the same name, but they route differently based on their location.
Sure.
Some may do California and versus, Texas. So it's like they have to provide their information that we require in order to process. If not, it just delays. So that's a teaching process for them as well. And then we tell them, if you don't want to do non-PO, we tell the bases do PO, let them get in the portal, make sure they invoice off the PO, and they don't have to make sure all their information's there, because it can just, they can invoice directly within Coupa. We don't allow our suppliers to bill non-PO within the portal, so everything that they bill within the portal has to be PO backed. So we're also teaching or enforcing that, you're going to have to start with the PO in order for, them to get paid timely.
Sure. And that's awesome, and can kind of show you how different customers approach, right? Their suppliers, and some lessons there as well. As I understand what you're saying, you can't fix everything with technology, right? Some of that is going back to the suppliers and pushing that on them. I think that's a great lesson. I think the other results we're seeing, 0 backlog. That's a good number when we're looking at backlog and the 60-second average review time. Another number that we're really proud of, a KPI I think that a lot of organizations would be happy with. Jordan, we'll let you wrap on Gasper here, and also what we're looking, I think what CrossCountry is looking to do with Rossum and with Atlantic Aviation going forward. You tell me where I should go here.
Yeah, so we got 5 minutes or so. I mean,
Sure.
I'll give you an example of, I think, what's possible with Rossum. So Atlantic Aviation had fuel-backed invoices that were driven by a PO, a quantity and a price per gallon. As we know, prices at the pump always fluctuate. So a lot of times they would get an invoice from the vendor that didn't match the original price per gallon on the PO. And what Rossum will do is it will look at the price per gallon. Okay, $5.20 a gallon. Maybe we're in California. An invoice comes in with $6.20 per gallon, and based on the total dollar difference, create a new line, either an inventory line or expense line with named coding, and send that to Coupa. So, Liza, you and team probably have one of the most complicated invoice processes I've ever seen with this process here. But I think let that be an example of some of the things that you can do within Rossum.
Yes, and that was nice too, because like Jordan was stating, we get weekly pricing from our suppliers, but sometimes where we're quoted the price for that terminal that week, they may not be able to pull, so they have to use an alternate terminal. Well, with that comes different pricing. Therefore, it's a pass-through fee that they charge us, to make up what we were originally quoted. So you may have some price differences, and Rossum was able to accommodate, we call them price overrides, and get them so that when our team's reviewing, because technically it's an exception, anything over $50 variance for our fuel invoices is a variance that we have to review and research to make sure what we're being billed is accurate. So it took that out from our team having to calculate it manually and putting it in Coupa already with the calculation and how it needs to be coded. It's just now ready for their review. So that was something nice that that took out that calculation for our team. It was just more of a review. Are we accurate? Do we need to dispute anything? Just for our research. So that was something nice.
I fully agree. Nice and complex, but I think the outcome was a good one.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of questions in chat. I think it's going to be hard to get to all of these. Liza, when I think about what's next, utility queues in process. Rossum has a cool tool called statement reconciliation. So if you get a month-end statement from a vendor with 10 invoices and 2 credits, it can validate that both of those dollar amount and status are in Coupa. So I know we're thinking about that, Liza, and kind of the timing for that, and then just continued automation. Working to make sure we're optimizing the confidence scores by field to automate.
Yeah, and we can open it up for Q&A. I'll just say on statement reconciliation, it's only something we're offering our Coupa customers today, right? So we haven't rolled it out for the full market. It's something we do very well with Coupa, and something that a lot of our customers have seen a big benefit on. Statements are a bore, and I mean, they're a lot to deal with, not boring. And our customers have seen just a huge benefit in automating that process, as it's just kind of line by line trying to match. And then the automation assistant, I'm just going to touch on it quickly. What we're doing with Automation Assistant is something that nobody else can do on the market. We're using AI to run millions of algorithms in the background, and exactly what Jordan said, which was how can you play with different fields around accuracy and around confidence scoring to enable more automation. And we can pull a report for you that allows you to kind of play with those fields and get you your most optimized results. So it's something really neat that we're using, like data points that we're tracking anyways, to pull that report. But we'll go into Q&A. I know we've had a couple questions come through. Jordan, if you want to read them out or whatever you want to do, we can start answering them, or we can answer them as a team. I don't know how much time we have left.
Yeah, maybe let's go a couple, 2-3 minutes. Here's one I liked. When an invoice moves from Rossum to Coupa, are attachments included? And where are the attachments stored?
Yeah, I can take that. So when a document is processed, Rossum exports both the extracted structured data and the original files, right? So I believe in Coupa, you might have a better understanding of exactly where they're stored, Jordan, in Coupa, but they go into the invoice processing queue inside Coupa. Or Liza, you could probably give more detail there.
Yes, when an invoice is being processed through Rossum, it does carry over into Coupa, and upon review or coding or the review of what we're paying, validating, you are able to open up the invoice to do a side by side to make sure that the data that you're filling in or confirming is valid with what is on the document.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that last point is key, Liza. And it comes over in the image scan field.
Yes.
In Coupa. So I think, if you use NetSuite or another ERP, that can go to NetSuite. Duplicate detection. We talked through that.
Yep.
Great explanation of that, Liza. There's a question around fuel. This is it. So, Liza, you touched on this, but how does Rossum know to create an extra line?
So that was something we worked with Virginia on at CrossCountry because the lines of the PO are in Rossum. It pulls it from Coupa. So it's like a trail, right? It moves from our POS system to our ERP. Our ERP sends them up to Coupa, and then Rossum is able to access them as well. It's just never going to have the PO, right? Because the PO is not initiated through Coupa. So Rossum can see the PO total, look at the invoice total. If there's a variance over a certain amount, then we automatically do a price override. Virginia helped with that implementation of that. Like if it's $50 over, just go ahead and do a price override and then let us research. If it turns out upon our research, once it's in Coupa, that it doesn't need a price override, we have the ability to change it back to the original price. It just takes out that manual work that our team would have to do, because most of the time it is a price override. But in the case that it's not, and there truly is a variance, say in gallons, and that variance needs to go to a specific geocode, we have the ability to reverse that price override, but within Coupa, as we're reviewing prior to approval.
Okay.
Awesome. I think we're out of time, I believe. So I think we can just kind of wrap up by saying thank you to everybody that has been on the other end and for joining us today. I think we don't have emails here below, but we will happily reach out, I think, to everybody that's been on the webinar today with our contact information. If you have any questions for Jordan or I around Rossum, please reach out. We'd be happy to get back to you. So again, thanks everybody. And thank you, Liza. Thank you, Jordan, for joining.
Thank you, Liza.
My
Thank you so
pleasure.
much.
Yes, of course.
Guys, have a great day.
All right.
Good to see
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.